When I walked into the bedroom, the place where I had shared so many peaceful nights with Natalie, the atmosphere became even heavier. Everything was the same, but now it felt unnaturally cold. I stood in the middle of the room, recalling those moments when I thought my life would always be this way, happy, simple, without any betrayal. But now everything had changed. It was at that moment I decided I needed to get away from it all. I had done everything I could to get my revenge, to make them feel the pain I had felt, but now I needed a new beginning. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of the past. I had to change. I had to start over. And right there in that empty bedroom, I decided to sell the house and everything related to it. It was time to leave, to find a new life, and I didn't need any explanation or forgiveness from Natalie. When I left the city, it wasn't because I was running away, but because I needed to save myself. I didn't need to see Natalie. I didn't need to hear her fake apologies. I just wanted to start over, find the joy and freedom I once had. The scenery outside changed little by little as I drove away from the city. The busy roads, the tall buildings, all slowly faded behind me. I headed south, where I had decided to rebuild my life, a small hotel near the beach where I could start from scratch. No one knew who I was, no one knew about my past, just me, an abandoned hotel, and the waves crashing against the shore. When I arrived, everything seemed so uncertain. The hotel, an old building with 30 rooms and a small restaurant, looked as though it had been forgotten for a long time. I didn't think this would be the place where I would find peace, but it intrigued me. This was an opportunity to start fresh. It was time to truly live for myself. Over the next few days, I took care of every little detail in the hotel, painting the walls, replacing the old wooden benches, and making the pool area more beautiful. I began to create a peaceful space where I could finally find the freedom I had longed for. Not long after, the first customers began to arrive. They were European tourists looking for a place to relax, escaping the noise of the city. The hotel started to show signs of life, and I felt proud of what I had accomplished. But life is never simple, and surely no one can run from the past forever. One morning, as I was cleaning the pool area, a luxury car pulled up in front of the hotel. I looked up and saw a woman step out. I recognized her immediately. It was Natalie. She stood under the sunlight, looking around the hotel, then looked at me. A strange feeling surged within me. This time there was no anger or fear, only emptiness and a deep sadness. Natalie, the woman I once loved, now stood before me like a stranger. She walked toward me, her eyes red from sleepless nights, her face hollow from the worries she had carried all this time. "Tom," she called my name, but the sound seemed to be swallowed by the space around us. "I thought you wouldn't be looking for me anymore," I replied, my voice cold, unable to hide my indifference. "And yet here you are, right in front of me." "Tom, I'm sorry. I really don't know what to say to make you understand. I was wrong, I know, but I've lost everything. Paul is dead, and I—" She stopped, as if unsure of what to say next. I just looked at her, not saying a word. The words she spoke might be an apology, but they couldn't change the truth. Everything was over, and I didn't want to go back. "I don't need your apology," I said, staring directly into her eyes. "You've got what you wanted. As for me, I have my own life now. Don't look for me anymore." She looked at me, her eyes wide in disbelief, as if she never imagined I could change this much. But I was no longer the man she once knew. I had been through too much pain to not realize that this life is mine, and I have the right to decide how I live. Natalie stood silent for a moment before turning and walking away. She didn't say another word, and I, standing in the sunlight of a new day, felt lighter than ever. My life had changed. I was no longer a victim of betrayal. I looked out toward the beach, where the waves crashed against the shore. Time may pass, but one thing I had learned is that no one can change the past, but we can control our own future. The silence after Natalie left lingered within me like a storm that had passed, leaving a quiet space, but also stirring an undercurrent inside me. This feeling was uncomfortable, as if I hadn't completed something, as if things weren't fully finished. But I knew I had done the right thing, that my life now belonged to me. No more shady relationships, no more lies or betrayal. The next day, I stood on the hotel balcony looking out at the sea. The waves crashed against the shore, soothing like a promise that everything would be okay. I had started over, building a new life. The hotel was slowly filling with guests, and I began to feel a bit of freedom, a bit of happiness that I never thought I could find again. Everything was going well until I received a call that I didn't expect. A strange number appeared on my phone screen, and a vague feeling swept over me. I answered the call. "Tom?" A strange voice from the other end of the line said. "Do you remember me?" "It's Kyle." My heart stopped for a moment. I had hoped that after receiving the money, everything would be over, that I wouldn't have to face Kyle again. But now he was calling me. A different feeling surged within me, a light anxiety but also a strange curiosity. I never thought Kyle would find a way to contact me after paying the money. "I don't know what you want," I replied, my voice cold. "But if you're thinking of seeking revenge, I suggest you give it up." "No, Tom, it's not like that. I just want to talk. Can we meet?" Kyle's voice sounded determined, but there was something broken in it, as if he was facing something bigger than himself. I was silent for a moment. I didn't like this feeling, but I couldn't keep running from the past, and clearly Kyle was begging for something important that he couldn't solve alone. I agreed to meet him, but this time things would be different. I was no longer the weak one in this relationship. I had become stronger. We met at a small coffee shop, a place I chose because it was quiet and secluded. Kyle sat across from me, still the cold-looking man, but I could clearly see that the confidence he once had was gone. His face showed an anxiety that he couldn't hide. "I don't know what to say to make you understand," Kyle began, his voice tired. "But I'm not here to cause trouble. I know I made a huge mistake, and I just want to apologize. I ruined everything, not just with my wife, but also with you." I didn't answer immediately. I just stared at him. Silent apologies couldn't bring back what was lost, couldn't erase what he had done. But I knew that if I let him continue like this, something else would rise within me, obsession, regret, and I couldn't let that happen. "Do you want me to forgive you?" I asked, my voice showing clear skepticism. "Do you think these apologies can erase everything I've been through? The feeling of being betrayed, deceived, how can that be forgiven?" Kyle was silent, his eyes cast down at the table. "I know I can't make you change your mind, but I just want to say that I was wrong, and I want a chance to make things right, not with my wife, but with myself." His look seemed like that of a man who had lost everything and now only had fear of what was to come. I no longer saw Kyle as I did before, the powerful, wealthy man who could pull everything in his direction. Now he was just an ordinary man caught up in the whirlwind of his own wrong decisions. "I don't need your forgiveness," I said, my voice calm. "And you don't need to worry about me. I have my own life, and so do you." Learn to live with what you've done. Kyle looked at me in confusion, as if he couldn't understand why I was being so firm. But I knew this was the last time we would meet. Part of me wanted to say something different. Part of me wanted to sympathize with him. But I understood that my life couldn't go back, couldn't be changed. I had taken my revenge. I had regained control of my life. Kyle stood up, looked at me one last time, then left the cafe without saying another word. As he disappeared from view, I felt a sense of relief spreading through me. My life was no longer haunted by the past. I had chosen to move forward, and no one, not even Kyle or Natalie, could stop me. I didn't know what the future would hold, but one thing I was sure of. I would never go back to the mistakes of the past, and I would live this life freely, without any constraints. After meeting with Kyle, I felt like I had lifted a heavy burden. Everything seemed clearer now. No more confusion, no more lingering questions in my mind about the choices I had made. Kyle was gone, and though I didn't know if he would truly change, it no longer mattered to me. I had done what I needed to do and regained control of my life. However, one thing I didn't expect was that Natalie would continue to appear in my life in ways I hadn't anticipated. She still found ways to contact me, still sent apology messages, still occasionally called, and each time I was forced to face the feeling I thought I had already overcome. The pain from the broken promises. One afternoon, while I was cleaning the hotel pool area, a car pulled up in front of the hotel. I looked up and immediately recognized her. Natalie was standing there silently looking at me from outside. She seemed to have changed so much, not the confident, proud woman she once was. Now she looked like a lost woman, exhausted, not knowing what to do next. She walked in, her eyes looking at me with worry, as if searching for something she knew she couldn't have anymore. "Tom, I can't keep living like this. I've lost everything, and now I'm all alone," Natalie spoke, her voice full of sorrow. "I can't go back to the past, but I just want you to understand that I was wrong. I love you, and I truly want you to forgive me." I looked at her for a moment, and my emotions were no longer as intense as before. Not because I didn't still love her, but because I understood that some things couldn't be salvaged. Time couldn't go back, and what we had was long gone. "Natalie, it's over," I said, my voice without tension or anger. "You have nothing left to apologize for. You chose your path, and I've chosen mine. I have my own life now, and there's no place for you in it." She was silent, her eyes brimming with tears, but I didn't feel any pity for her anymore. I was no longer the weak man she could exploit. I had found strength within myself, and now I lived for myself. "I'll go," Natalie said, her voice choked. "I won't bother you anymore. I know what I have to do now." And then she turned and walked out of the hotel without looking back. I stood there, watching her figure fade into the mist of the beach. The emptiness still existed, but I knew I had done the right thing. I hadn't let forgiveness or guilt hold my life back. Once she was gone, I looked out at the sea again. The waves were still crashing against the shore, endlessly, repeatedly. That was the rhythm of life, and I knew I had to move forward. My life had changed, not because of what had happened, but because of what I had learned throughout this process. I realized that betrayal can break your heart, but it can also create a new strength within you. Only you can decide what to do with those broken pieces, to reshape them into a new picture, a new life. And now here I stand by the sea, a different man, no more pain, no more regret, just freedom, the determination to live for myself. What happens in life is sometimes inevitable, but betrayal is not the end. It is only a full stop so you can continue writing your own story. Never let the pain of the past hold back your future. Only you can decide how you will move forward, and you have the right to create a new, stronger life than ever before. I am Thomas Miller, and if you ask me about what happened, I would say that my life was forever changed. One evening, just like any other evening, I don't know if I was even fully aware of what was happening at that moment, but what I'm about to tell you will make you rethink the simplest things in life. That day, everything was as usual. After a long day at work at the hotel, I came home with a cold beer in hand and a desire to relax for a bit. But when I walked into the house, everything was not as I thought. Max, my Labrador dog, ran up to greet me as usual, but today he was carrying something strange, a pair of Miami Dolphins football shorts, a team that both Natalie and I knew well. I looked down at the shorts in Max's mouth, and a strange feeling surged within me. "Whose shorts are these?" "Certainly not mine. And Natalie doesn't play sports like that," I asked Max, a question without thinking. "Where did you get this from?" But I got no answer other than his innocent gaze. I could pretend I hadn't seen anything and let it slide, but an inexplicable feeling, something gnawing at me, arose within my chest. Something was definitely wrong. I walked into the house, Max still following me, and I began to notice small details that I hadn't before. Our bedroom door was slightly ajar. Natalie was standing in front of the mirror, hurriedly changing clothes. The yellow light in the room reflected her figure. Something inside me tightened when I saw her, not out of love, but because of a strange feeling. As I entered the living room, I saw Natalie's phone lying on the table, its screen lighting up, with a text from a name I didn't recognize. "I miss you." I couldn't believe my eyes. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to brush off everything I had just seen, but another part of me wanted to uncover the truth. I didn't know if I had the courage to face it, but then I decided I had to find out. The next day, I decided to monitor everything. I couldn't leave a suspicion unresolved. I thought maybe I was overreacting, but the feeling inside me wouldn't allow me to overlook it. I knew I needed to be certain. I worked with a close friend, Alex, who was in the tech and security business. He was the only one I trusted to help me install a hidden camera system in the house without being detected. I remember, as we were working in the bedroom, Alex looked at me and asked, "Are you really sure you want to do this?" I didn't answer immediately. I just stared at the screen of my phone, where I had watched hundreds of videos of Natalie and Kyle. "This isn't going to be easy," Alex continued, but I simply nodded in response, and then my plan began. I didn't let Natalie know anything. Every day when I went to work, I watched everything through my phone, calls, texts, secret meetings. I couldn't escape the feeling of helplessness, but I had to continue. I wanted to prove something to myself. I wanted to know that I wasn't mistaken. I gradually discovered that on Mondays and Thursdays when I was at work, Natalie would have secret meetings with Kyle, the CEO of the company she worked for. I began to understand that this wasn't a coincidence. This was a covert affair, and I was the last one to figure it out. But the question still lingered in my mind. Why Kyle? An older man, married, not particularly handsome or charming, like the men Natalie had been with in the past. Was it just a fleeting attraction, or was she searching for something I couldn't provide? A week passed, and I realized that what I was doing wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about preparing for revenge, a battle I never wanted, but I couldn't turn back. There was only one path ahead, and that was to face Natalie and Kyle. Now that I had all the evidence in hand, facing the truth wasn't easy, and it was even harder knowing that this could change my life forever. But deep down, I knew I couldn't stop. I needed to see it. I needed to understand what was happening, and there was only one way to do that. My house no longer felt the same. Every corner, every room had become a surveillance zone. In my mind, I could see everything through my phone, Natalie moving around the house, secret conversations on the phone, moments of intimacy I had never witnessed. But perhaps the most chilling moment was when I saw the meeting in the bedroom. Kyle and Natalie walked into the room, shutting the door behind them. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I had grown accustomed to that eerie silence. The next video showed them entwined on the bed we had once shared. Every movement, every glance made me feel as if an invisible hand was squeezing my heart. I had once imagined that if one day, if somehow I found out this truth, I would react. In anger, confront them, and then everything would be okay. But now, staring at the phone screen, I didn't feel anger, only emptiness, a hollow feeling. Everything I had known about love, about trust, now seemed like shattered pieces that couldn't be put back together. The dream of a happy family, of a loyal wife, now felt like a lie, and I was no longer the man I thought I was. But this silence, this slow action on my part, was perhaps the most dangerous thing I had planned, not just to confront Natalie and Kyle, but to make them pay. This wasn't just about betrayal, this was a battle of self-respect, a story about how I had been treated by them. Everything was ready. One evening, I decided it was the moment that would leave no room for turning back. I stood at the bedroom door, my hand tightly gripping the doorknob. Taking a deep breath, I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel fear. It was just calm, as if everything had been set up a long time ago. When they walked into the living room, I was sitting there, waiting. Natalie saw me first, her eyes showing a hint of surprise, but then quickly replaced by confidence. "Tom, you're home early," she said, not looking me in the eye. Kyle stood behind her, his eyes flashing with discomfort, but he remained silent. They both tried to create a normal atmosphere, but I knew they were both scared. They didn't know what awaited them. I stood up and slowly walked to the table where the remote control was. I pressed the button and the large screen lit up. The footage I had recorded from the hidden camera started to appear. I let the video play, scene by scene, their intimate gestures, their whispered words, all played clearly in front of them. An abrupt silence took over the room. Natalie opened, her mouth as if to say something, but her words were choked. She looked at me, then at Kyle. Kyle could only lower his head, not daring to say a word. They both realized that everything had come to an end. "Don't worry, I'm not taking any pictures or recording new videos," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, not letting my emotions show. This is what I've gathered over the past few weeks. Now we have a few issues to resolve. Kyle looked at me, his eyes showing clear fear, but also a bit of determination. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice no longer confident. "I don't care about your reasons or excuses," I replied. "I only care about one thing, money. If you don't want this story to go public, I need $500,000, and if you think I'm joking, think again." Natalie looked at me, her gaze showing panic. "Tom, please don't do this. We can work everything out without money," she said. But in her voice there was worry, not an apology. I didn't respond to her right away. I just smiled and then turned to Kyle. $500,000, no more, no less. That's the price I'm offering. Do you think you have enough money to buy my silence? After a few seconds of silence, Kyle simply nodded. I handed him a piece of paper with my bank account details. "Transfer the money here within 48 hours. If not, this video will reach the important people in your life." Neither of them said anything more. After they left the house, I didn't feel victorious. The feeling inside me wasn't satisfaction, but emptiness. I had won, but was it really a victory? My plan had been executed, but none of us could have guessed that my life would be changed forever. After receiving that money when Kyle left the house, I didn't feel the satisfaction I had imagined. Everything happened too easily, as if he had no other choice but to give in. But the truth was not so simple. I knew a man with power and money. Like Kyle wouldn't just surrender easily, and a strange feeling started creeping into me. It was emptiness. I had thought that if I got my revenge, I would feel happy, but now I didn't. I stood alone in the living room, looking out the window where the last rays of the day slowly faded. The house now felt like an inescapable hell, every corner reminding me of the betrayal. I couldn't erase the silence in the house. It was like an invisible wall blocking all my thoughts and emotions.